forecasters are keeping their eye on a potential tropical development that may visit the Florida coast and the Carolina coast next week. I talk one-on-one with Charleston Weather's Jared Smith for the latest on this for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Jared Smith with Charleston Weather. Welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Great to be here, Quintin.
Oh, I appreciate it greatly. I'm bringing you back on Quintin's Close-Ups because obviously there's a tropical development, possibly tropical storm Debby, that will actually hit, I believe, the Gulf Coast of Florida and obviously impacting the Carolinas next week. So tell me, what's new, what's now with that?
Well, as you know, at the time that we're recording this, we're getting close to the 5 o'clock advisory.
Right.
It does not look like anything is formed yet, but we'll just pop over here. I've got the satellite. Got the satellite here, so you can see this guy. He's just he's just over Cuba, and yeah, there's a little bit of a twist to him. There's a little bit of a twist to him here, and as you can see the track here, it's going to just go up the gut. Looks like it's going to develop in the Gulf of Mexico, maybe around the Florida Straits, because it's not developed yet. It's a potential tropical cyclone,
right.
And the reason why the Hurricane Center calls it a potential tropical cyclone is because it hasn't formed yet, but they need the ability to issue watches and warnings. And so we do have tropical storm watches and warnings in Florida. So it's going to kind of come up the gut there, and it looks like it could slow down. I think that's the thing that I'm most concerned about, is that it could cut across Florida and then slow down. If it follows this track to keep us off the to keep the center off the coast, that keeps the wind offshore. That keeps the worst of the wind offshore. But the rain, that's the thing that I think could be a little bit, that could get dicey depending on where it tracks. But all that to say is that it's still very early. We don't have a storm. Model guidance will continue to waffle here a little bit. We're seeing some of the fundamentals come together as far as the forecast ideas, and I think rain is a pretty good bet next week. Late in the weekend, early next week. But again, forward speed, all that, a lot to determine still.
With all these models that you all have currently, Jared, which one is adding up to be the most popular and the most accurate?
It's hard to say because we're not sure yet. I mean, that's something that we'll find out afterwards. It is notable that the European model did have tropical cyclone development. It's had it for the better part of a week, but it had a much stronger storm that was going to recurve. East of Florida. But the American GFS model, right, had weaker solutions that drifted into the Gulf of Mexico. And so far, that's what, and it started having that a couple days ago. It was a little slower on the uptake to develop this, but once it did, that's what it landed on, and the European model has since corrected back to that. So we have decent confidence in the Gulf of Mexico scenario, 3 or 4 days, right? We have pretty good confidence in that. And then beyond that, that's when things begin to diverge. There could be, high pressure building in the north could turn it so far west, but that's pretty unlikely at this point. The general consensus and the Hurricane Center forecast, which is what we should all be using, does call for it to slow down, parallel the coast. Hopefully keeping that center, far enough offshore to where we don't have to deal with a lot of wind impacts. Surge is certainly a possibility. We're going to have a new moon on Sunday, so that's something that we're going to have to keep an eye on too.
And so by the time this potential, cyclone gets to Charleston, or really the Carolinas, Jared, do you believe the steering currents will be weakened by that time?
That's what it's looking like so far, and the question is just to what degree. Right, that's the issue right now. Is high pressure going to build in, kind of block its northern, its ability to go north before another trough is able to swing in and carry it away? It will eventually leave, but it may just take a while, just because of the potential for that high to build in. But again, there's plenty of solutions that actually look at that and say, maybe that's not, maybe that's not the move. I mean, we'll go back to, I'll just take it back to the map here.
Yes.
Got some of the spaghetti up, and let me clear out. Actually, let me clear out the some of the other stuff here. Let me just take that. I'm going to take the whoops, took the wrong thing off. but you can see. I'll zoom in a little bit, and you can see the you can see reasonably good agreement through where to the Florida Keys, and then as time goes on, then we start to diverge. Now there is a pretty tight clustering of the models, bringing it ashore, kind of in north of Tampa, cutting across Gainesville, Jacksonville, and then you have some models that are kind of hugging the coast. But again, this is where it diverges, because we've had some model solutions stall it. Some of these model solutions seem to indicate that the trough will pick it up and accelerate it out of here, maybe a little bit faster. It's just we just don't know. We just don't know. But right now, the Hurricane Center forecast, which again, that's what we're using. That official forecast that is indicating that this is going to slow down as a tropical storm, and depending on intensity is always a little bit of a wild card with these. It could be a hurricane, but again, if it stays if it stays over water, the worst of that wind stays over the water.
Thank God for that.
That's what we hope for.
Yes.
The water's going to be enough.
Yeah, you're right about that. Obviously, I've done interviews with you, Quintin's closest, about these hurricanes, tropical storms, and other tropical activity over the past 10 years, I believe.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so we talked about most of those storms that you just mentioned that actually had those slowed down components. Mm-hmm. Which ones does this particular tropical cyclone actually resembles?
It's hard to tell yet. I mean, there's a little bit of the tight track towards the coast might track wise, you might think of Charlie, you might think of Michael, not Michael, Matthew. Sorry, right. I get my M storms mixed up sometimes. Michael was nasty, but not to us. Thank goodness. But but every storm's different too. And I throw those names out only to say that track wise, they could be similar. Intensity wise, it could be a very different ball game. We just don't know. And so that's something that I want to make sure that that folks are aware of, is that every storm is different. And I mean, it's just that time of year too. This is not uncalled for at this point. It's not uncalled for to have something kind of do like a call in, for example. That was another kind of close call that we had in 2016 that kind of brushed us, gave us some rain, and got out of here.
Yes.
So the always looking at these for maybe history can sometimes tell us what the future will bring, but we really have to look at every storm kind of for its merits and its setup, and forecast accordingly.
And I hate to ask a silly question, but what are the merits of this particular potential development right here?
Yeah, I mean, again, it hasn't formed yet, but I mean, certainly, the models so far are thinking, tropical storm, which, again, that's nothing to shake a stick at. We've had tropical storms, deliver very, in very recent history, some of the highest tides we have on record. And again, with that new moon there, that is certainly something that I'm going to be watching. And me and everybody else who does weather around here, we're going to be keeping an eye on that part. Depending on where it tracks, and how slow it's moving, could allow for water to pile up. How big the storm is. I mean, there's a lot to it. The other thing that we always tell people to do is prepare a category up. And so right now we show it as a tropical storm, but maybe the prep call is a category 1 hurricane. Just step it up. You won't regret it, right? It's a path of least regret. So again, that's something that we'll have to keep an eye on. That's something over time. And again, I want to stress to folks is that we can't necessarily lock in any of these impacts. There's going to be rain. That's a pretty good bet. That was going to be a good bet regardless. We were going to have some. It's August. It's very, very humid.
Yes.
And very warm. And so just before we started talking, you were talking about, I hope I'm dodging the rain. So so that's something that we're going to have to deal with. Just regardless. But the intensity of it and the rain shield and all that stuff, a lot of that's still kind of out there. The exact amount of rain. Right now, the Hurricane Center and the Weather Prediction Center are collaborating. About 4 to 6 inches are possible along the coast. So we'll see. That can change. We still have a few days to watch this. So, So again, my advice to everybody is just get ready for if you're downtown, you might want to be thinking
Yes.
about the potential for flooding on Sunday, Monday. I don't think that that is a bad thing to think about, to get prepared for that possibility. The good news is that if we stay on the west side of the storm,
Yes.
that those onshore winds won't last very long. They'll turn offshore, and that will reduce that flooding risk.
And I wanted to ask you this earlier, Jared, but let me ask you this. Will this just be a tropical moisture versus actually a tropical system?
It looks like it's going to be a tropical cyclone.
Mm.
The chances are very good that it's going to develop into a tropical cyclone. I think even the models that had been kind of you know they'd been they hadn't been on board. They've come on board with that. So I do think it's going to be a tropical cyclone. Like you mentioned at the top, probably will be named Debby. There's nothing out there that seems like it's going to take the name before this one gets going.
Mm.
Um, so I do think that we're going to be dealing with a named storm. It's very possible that we may see, we might see tropical storm watches. We might see eventually, if things continue, maybe tropical storm warnings, stuff like that. So the good news is that we've done this before.
Yes. Yes,
So,
absolutely.
we've done this before. We know what to do. Um, this is not, at least right now, the way I look at it, it is not a situation where, evacuations and things like that would have to happen. Certainly not. I don't think that's in the cards. We'll see. I hope not, and odds are it won't.
Yeah.
But again, it just behooves everybody to just keep an eye on these, keep an eye on these because tropical cyclones sometimes they pull dirty tricks. You don't like that.
Yeah, you're right about that. Absolutely. And this is an off the topic question, Jared, but where is our friend, the Saharan dust?
So the Saharan dust was actually the thing that kept it from already forming.
Mm.
It was so this wave again. We've been looking at this wave for days, and as it crossed 40, 50 degrees west, it finally started to shed some of that dry air. It was a dry storm. I mean, we were already talking about the potential for it developing some sort of tropical characteristics when it didn't even have thunderstorms with it. There wasn't even. I mean, if you looked on the satellite and you didn't know what you were looking for, you wouldn't find it. I mean, it was just one of those things. It just looked like a clear day with it. Maybe a little bit of a little bit of additional cloud cover, but that is what has kept it from developing to this point. Saharan dust has been there for the past few weeks. It's why we've had a lull. And we've been in kind of an unfavorable phase of the Madden-Julian oscillation, which is one of those teleconnections that helps to that we can use to kind of figure out, okay, are we going to have more sinking air over the ocean, or are we going to have more rising air over the ocean? Right now, we're getting into that phase where lower pressures over the ocean, so a little bit more of that rising air, a little bit more likely that we could start to see some stuff spin up. But that being said, the dust has helped us to this point. The Saharan dust is actually in Texas.
Right.
Houston is having some great sunsets right now, from what I understand. So it's south of there. South is it's southwest of this guy at this point, but again, and it is still fighting some dry air issues. But as it gets here, I don't know that it's going to have as much dry air that it's going to have to contend with. The thing that's probably going to act as a governor on this is land interaction and just some unfavorable conditions as time goes on. We'll have to watch it in the Gulf. I think it's the one thing that the Gulf is a wild card.
Yes.
The waters over the Gulf right now in this part of the Gulf are around 90, 91 degrees.
Mm.
And that's hot.
Yes.
That's just so. We'll have to keep an eye on it. We'll hope that it doesn't stay over the Gulf very long.
Yes.
The longer it's over the Gulf, that might be something that we have to, that we have to be concerned about. We have to watch the wind shear. Wind shear can help, tilt these things and disrupt them. And we're going to hope for some shear to work on this. And it looks like we may have, at least a little of that. So there's a couple governors here that are going to work in our favor. But again, these things can surprise you. So, I've seen storms that were engulfed in Saharan dust that became Cat 4 hurricanes. So, very far out in the Atlantic, to be clear, but it's not unheard of.
Right.
They can shed that stuff and they can, come up to speed.
Huh. Very interesting. So this might be another silly question, but when do you? So where's the dust heading to next after leaving Texas?
Well, it's going to continue to drift west, and then it's just going to end up where there's more dust. So, I mean,
Ah,
really, not a lot. That we'll see. We'll see if there's another puff that comes off of the coast of Africa. When I look at when I'm just going to take a quick peek. Well, the sun's going down over there, so I got to switch my satellite product. So I'm taking a peek over here just to
sure.
see what's our what does it look like? And there's a couple waves. I mean, we can see a couple we can see a couple waves coming off the coast here. Here's one right here. Here's another one right here. And then just areas of disturbed weather. Pretty much what we're going to see in August. The development window moves a little bit further because these waters start getting a little bit warmer, although they've been warm pretty much all season. As you recall with Beryl, it didn't take very long at all for Beryl to get going, and it was very far to the east, climatologically speaking, than we're used to. So, there's a couple waves out there. Let me see what I can see on the. I actually do have a dust mode, but I think it only works during the day.
Ah,
Let's see what this looks like. So yeah, I mean, so if you see this pink, this pink showing up a little bit, then where I've got my mouse, that's where we have maybe a little bit of dust and dry air. But overall, we're kind of moving again. As I mentioned before, we're moving into a pattern where the drier air is going to be less of a is going to be less of a factor. I mean, there's still plenty of it out there, but it's going to become less and less of a factor as time goes on. We'll watch it. We're getting into the climatological peak of the season.
yes,
it's going to be a busy couple months possibly.
Let's God forbid if all of this is coming our way. We need some better weather.
just recurve it. That's all I want. Yeah.
Yes,
No kidding.
indeed. Absolutely. Well, Jared Smith with Charleston Weather. Thank you for your time again. Welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thank you, Quintin. Always a pleasure.
Likewise.